All right, well, thank you everyone for coming out and braving the weather and traffic of the track meet, I guess. So today, I'm going to give an introduction on text analytics. I didn't want to call it just an introduction, so inspired by Dr. Monahan, we're going to do a primer on text analytics. Also, I wanted to make sure to give this from maybe a slightly different perspective than you would see if you just Googled text analytics on the web. Because this is very much a multidisciplinary area, a lot of the introductions to this topic come from a wide variety of perspectives, and the one I found lacking the most online when I was looking into this stuff myself was from the perspective of a statistician. So that's what we're really going to try to do. I've been working in this area since around October of last year. It's a part of my GIT at GSK. I work for an analytics group inside of medical, where we use text analytics to better understand physicians' and patients' experiences with GSK products from a medical standpoint. So nothing involved in what can we do to make you buy more, but more so what are some of the adverse reactions that are you seeing and things like that. We use social media as well as summaries of interactions with physicians. So we're going to start with some of the big W's. So what is text analytics? Well, I threw up some of the textbook type definitions, but if we really get down to the root of what are we working with here, we're simply doing analytics where our data is in some type of unstructured format. How do we usually get data, right? It's either numerical or it falls into specific fields such that we can then just create dummy variables and use it as categories. Well, what is text data? It's just text. It's information, and it's completely unstructured. There is no set path to go from that to some type of design matrix. So we need to figure out how do we get to that point. As I said, it's very much a multidisciplinary area. One thing I like about this chart is you see that the statistics, while we get the most boring color on the board, we do encompass the biggest part of this. And there's a lot of components, whether that be computational linguistics, some of this information retrieval, and then data mining, which is apparently separate from statistics altogether. So why do you do text analytics? Well, if you look online, you'll get many different numbers, but in general, 80% seems to be the most popular, saying that 80% of the data in the world is actually in an unstructured format, whether that be coming from email, surveys, and one thing I never really thought of is scientific literature. That's also data, and that's also in a completely unstructured format. But really, why do we do it? Because data is information. It's not just numbers. It's not just information that falls into structured fields. And as statisticians, if we were to only use data that falls into these structured fields, we are limiting ourselves in how much information we can use to inform our models and give inference and other things like that. So I said we're going to keep going through all the W's. Where? Well, everywhere, pretty much. Now, the extent to which these different fields use it is different. Sometimes it could literally just be, I'm going to pull a bunch of Twitter feeds and see how many times GSK is mentioned. Text analytics, boom, moving into the new age. So some of them might be a little more, I expect competitive intelligence to be pretty good at it, but they'll never tell you what they do, of course. And sometimes the marketing it's a joke, what you call text analytics. But I'm trying to give you an introduction that really will enable you to understand mostly what all these different areas work in. So what are the major challenges that we face when we're trying to use statistical methods on text? Well, the biggest one is the fact that using human language is not straightforward. As we know, there's many subtleties. Some words can be ambiguous. These are some of the most popular issues you can run into, is you have different words with the same meaning, same words that have different meaning, and as human beings, we understand this stuff because we can understand context. If you think of how a machine would look at text, it doesn't really get the context of it, and so we need to figure out how do we train a machine to understand human language. This falls under a category of what's called natural language processing, which is pretty much computers understanding English. This is what Watson is really, really good at. That's why I can understand wordplay and the puns involved with Jeopardy. You could literally give an entire lecture and course unto itself in this area. We're going to go through some of the major ways that it's done, but the real nuances of computational linguistics and natural language processing is rather vast. I think Stanford has like 3 courses that students that want to do artificial intelligence have to go through in this, just to give you an idea of how much information there is. So as I said, text is ambiguous. Here are some of my favorite examples of some headlines that really, if you don't get the context, you can see how these can be misinterpreted. So these are the challenges that we're facing. Now, as I said, text analytics is very much a multidisciplinary area, and one of the biggest areas in which it's promoted is the business world. So therefore, if you were to go to a presentation by IBM or SAS and they were going to show you how do you do text analytics, although I should clarify, usually they're not telling you how to do text analytics, but how to buy their products to do text analytics, and that's the only way to do it. There are businesses. But usually they'll have some type of flow chart, because that's what they always have in businesses. And I tried to put more understandable words instead of like synergistics and how business talk. It's all buzzwords. So usually there's 4 major steps in doing text analytics. There has to be some type of data collection and general curation of the information you're going to use. They're going to go through a data pre-processing step, which can be as ambiguous as you want to make it. Then whatever term you want to put for what we do as statisticians, analytics, data synergistics, those types of things. And then eventually you're going to end up with some type of insights, which can literally be as simple as GSK was mentioned 100 times in the past month, all the way to looking at life cycles of different topics and things like that on social media. As I said, I want to give this from a statistician's perspective. So let's go behind the curtain a little of what do these really mean and what have my experiences been with each of these steps in my own work. Well, the first step, not exactly my favorite step. Maybe some of you like it. It's an important step, but and as statisticians, obviously we want to know where the data comes from, because how it's sampled is very much how you make the insights in the end. And I shouldn't talk down to this. There's very, very intelligent people. And as Allison talked, with data comes in at ridiculous velocities now. And so you need very efficient manners in how to gather it. Next step is the pre-processing. All this really means, they sometimes call these ingestion engines and things like that. It's taking the unstructured information into some type of structured format such that we can simply apply statistical methods to it. And then that brings us to the last few steps. And well, as statisticians, this is what we do. This is our bread and butter. Of all these steps, this one can be, it's also called information retrieval. It can be its own lecture unto itself, and I obviously don't have a ton of interest in it. What I really want to focus on today is this step. How do you go from unstructured information into structured? Because you're going to see with text analytics, once you get the structured information, it's literally problems we have solved before, and you have the background to do it once you can get it to some type of structured format.